Hello, good evening, welcome. Thank you all for coming. When Catherine Smith and Abigail Morley and I had been to see an exhibition, we were sitting upstairs outside the poetry library, and we were talking about how when you went to see an exhibition that sometimes you had thoughts or inspirations from that exhibition, and that it was very, they remained locked inside your own head in a way. So the inspiration provided by an exhibition sometimes produces a poem, but we thought the poems that we wrote would become a form of dialogue with one another, a conversation together. And we thought if it worked for us, then it might work in a bigger way, that coming to an exhibition, which can frequently be quite a solitary and contained event, that if we had modern poets also visiting the exhibition, taking inspiration from the exhibition and writing their own work from it, then this in a way would provide a bridge, the bridge between the exhibition and you, between the exhibition and poetry, and it would be a place that we could all meet to share new ideas, and this is how Ekphrasis was born. This is our second event at the British Library's Cathedral of Literature. It's wonderful to welcome you all, because actually you're the reason that we're here. And our poets, for example, Ian Duig and Helen Mort, have come down from the snowy north, and Helen Ivory has jumped on a train. The wonderful Holly McNish is here. There are poets here representing the whole breadth of contemporary British poetry, and I would like you to sit back, enjoy, think, and possibly take away some inspiration of your own. Thank you for coming. I would like to welcome Natasha Little, who once won a fancy dress prize, apparently, for Alice in Wonderland a very long time ago. And she is going to start and continue in the evening with extracts from the original book.
Alice was beginning to get very tired of sitting by her sister on the bank and of having nothing to do. Once or twice she had peeped into the book her sister was reading, but it had no pictures or conversations in it. And what is the use of a book, thought Alice, without pictures or conversation? So she was considering in her own mind, as well she could, for the hot day had made her feel very sleepy and stupid, whether the pleasure of making a daisy chain would be worth the trouble of getting up and picking the daisies, when suddenly a white rabbit with pink eyes ran close by her. There was nothing so very remarkable in that, nor did Alice think it so very much out of the way to hear the rabbit say to itself, oh dear, I shall be too late." When she thought it over afterwards, it occurred to her that she ought to have wondered at this, but at the time it all seemed quite natural. But when the rabbit actually took a watch out of its waistcoat pocket and looked at it and then hurried on, Alice started to her feet. For it flashed across her mind that she had never before seen a rabbit, either with a waistcoat pocket or a watch to take out of it. And burning with curiosity, she ran across the field after it, and fortunately was just in time to see it pop down a large rabbit hole under the hedge. In another moment, down went Alice after it, never once considering how in the world she was going to get out again.
Reading Alice is a bit like standing on mysterious, unknown, shifting ground with your feet on fire. And returning to it, you realise it can be read in so many different ways. It's been adopted in so many languages and cultures, and it's a very democratic book, privileging risk and the imagination over everything else. No wonder poets are obsessed with it. So in that spirit, I have responded in verse by putting Alice in India, in Pune, which is just outside Bombay. More specifically, I've put her in a sari shop trying on saris. And then after I'd written this poem, thinking it was bizarre, I realised that actually Alice seemed quite comfortable there, which tells you something about the book. Alice in Pune, India. Alice. How long is forever? White rabbit. sometimes just 1 second. She's fingering the pearl border of a Banasi lenga by the noisy bloat of women and the rows of fine tussar silk. Maybe she senses me stalking her because she puts down the fabric, then speeds up, heading to the fitting rooms. She emerges in full kundan bridal set with a lungal lenga cholli. The assistants fuss and preen. She pirouettes, shaking her anklets. I weave my way through the georgettes, jollies, the sherwani jackets, wise in their hangers. Wake up, Alice, you can come home now, I call, but it all comes out like rabbit diction. She's 1 step ahead, her mung tikka swings across her forehead. A wink, a smile, she slips out of the shop, fast as a cat. Thank you.
From the sublime to the ridiculous. I thought when I wrote about this, I would mine that rich seam of my own stupidity, which has helped me in so many poems before. So it opens with a true story, how I became legendary for an idiotic thing I said in Ireland. It relates to a character that nobody remembers in Alice in Wonderland, which is Pat, the navvy, the Irish navvy, who is the servant of the White Rabbits. There is a phrase in here, Tenniel, apart from drawing Alice in Wonderland, was very famous amongst Irish people for the anti-Irish caricatures that he furnished for the pages of Punch magazine. So I kind of expand on the idea of stupidity in this. There is a second half to it where I come on to another Irish collection as well. This is called Alice Through the Cracked Looking Glass of a Servant, which refers to James Joyce, Ulysses, and that was the definition of Irish art, the cracked looking glass of a servant. So starts digging. Alice Liddell's age when she met Carroll first, the first time I visited home, as my parents called Ireland all their lives, I found myself in this soft Edenic mirror verse with its own secret language, stoats called weasels, white black puddings, and Uncle Pat conjuring up golden potatoes from dirt like that growing only litter and dog shit in Paddington Rec. In this new world, I too became legendary after asking doubled over Pat to dig me up an apple while he was at it. So I saw our cracked reflections in Pat, the White Rabbit servant, interrupted digging apples in Wonderland. I saw them too in Tenniel's cartoon apes for Sean Bouis's Yellow Press, brandishing shillelaghs inscribed Home Rule, swinging on some lost branch of my family tree, grown from an English cutting in a contrary garden, not my parents' Irish stock. The laughing stock, I was there, have been here, and am again. In this new hole, I now dig for myself. And apples, maybe a rabbit. Second part is Underland, and this is a true story. I discovered in researching this that a relative of Lewis Carroll's, where he went to write Jabberwocky near Sunderland, her niece was one of the models for Molly Bloom. In Ulysses, she married a hunter in Dublin, went to live there, and that really dead means it is. She was also given one of the early manuscripts of Alice's Adventures Under the Ground, illustrated by Lewis Carroll. Short ballad, Underland. Carroll finished Jabberwocky at his cousin's house near Sunderland, passing through the looking glass after Alice in Wonderland. His cousin's young niece Marion took Alfred Hunter for her groom, their lives inspiring Joyce when writing Molly and Leopold Bloom. Carroll gave her his first Alice hand-illustrated manuscript, a light, fantastic bridle path, so Marion Hunter tripped. But then she fell upon hard times and sold her manuscript of Alice, toasting what young girls are worth from her life's poisoned chalice. Drink me, it says on this poem, pour yourself a glass of ink, drink and watch its women growing and its poet shrink. Thank you for listening to me.
I've chosen to write about a character who's completely minor in Alice. In fact, you probably, unless you're a very attentive reader, won't remember her. Her name is Mabel, and she doesn't appear in person in the book, but Alice talks about Mabel, and she talks about her repeatedly at the beginning of the book when she finds herself completely at sea and not understanding what has happened to her. She repeatedly says she's frightened that she's become Mabel, and Mabel is someone that Alice pities and also perhaps represents a sort of threat to Alice. So I decided to write about Mabel and Mabel's life, and as I started writing, I wondered whether Lewis Carroll, when he describes Mabel in the book, was describing someone that Alice had really talked about, or whether it was just an archetype of a child who suffers. Some of the parts of this poem are taken from Alice in Wonderland. They're things that Alice actually says about Mabel. This is the Ballad of Mabel, and taken from Alice in Wonderland, the phrase, "Her eyes filled with tears again as she went on, I must be Mabel after all." Mabel, brown-eyed, unruly curls, she knows such a little, an empty vessel, a swine amongst pearls, a stain from the ink bottle. Her boots are old and the leather is worn, the scuffs are just spat on. Her dress is thin and her pinny is torn, and a sign round her neck reads slattern. She rubs her eyes with her fist till they're sore and dozes with her cheek in her palm. A sister that died, her father at war, nights jigging baby to calm. So many lessons to learn every night. She nurses, reads in the lull. She must be a dunce, she can't get it right. Dates just dance in her skull. Mabel knows nothing, her house is poky. Her bed's as narrow as a coffin, and once she woke and her sister was choking. But the doctor, he couldn't do nothing. Mabel's brother says he saw the Crimea, but came home for his chest. Once he told Mabel she had nothing to fear and felt under her dress. Mabel knows nothing, nothing at all, and her face is aflame when she's cuffed by the teacher and turned to the wall. Her ears go pink with shame. Mabel's hoop is at home, she says. She left her doll in bed. Mabel is standing alone. She says she's playmates enough in her head. Alice has a hoop, and a man takes her boating, and her tea is ready on the table. Alice once had a dream she was floating in tears and feared she was Mabel. The river is quiet. It's late and dusk. Mabel is wetting her toes and watching the fish swallow her crust in gold little O's. She'll catch it, she thinks, if the splashes are heard or if she's seen. But here she can lie in her spreading skirt and dream her own dream. Thank you.
I was very struck by the idea that the ancient old lady Alice was still, in a way, not forced, but had been so saddled with the fictional Alice that it was something that she carried on through life. There was, in a way, she couldn't grow up without still remaining Alice. And when she was in her 80s, her son Carol took her to New York to do a round of interviews, and people by their hundreds and thousands queued up to meet her. So I reimagined this in the present day. Oprah. I grew up. The Looking Glass became the Looking Glass Cocktail Club just down the Shoreditch end of Hackney Road. Chipped nail polish, drinking creme de bergamot. Each night I stumbled through the rabbit hole and found myself at 2 a.m. face down in a pool of tears, alone. A summer's afternoon so long ago, Sometimes I think it was a dream. The slow-moving river and the wooden boat, the weeping willow and the heat. They tell me he was kind. He came to call. There's a photograph of me with no clothes on, artfully posed, all of 8 years old. Thinking back, I remember that the blanket itched my skin, that I wasn't allowed to move, that the sky above was blue. Inappropriate. Things were different then, and I really just don't know. Slow-moving river and the wooden boat, that summer afternoon so long ago. Sometimes I think it was a dream. The weeping willow and the heat. I'm glad it still brings pleasure to the world, but wonder why you lean forwards in your chairs to look at me that way. What is it you want? Who in the world am I? That's the greatest puzzle, and even the words are his. I've no connection with that little girl, pressed in the pages of that book. She's floating down the Cherwell still. That summer afternoon so long ago, wooden boat and weeping willow, slow-moving river, and the heat. Sometimes I think it was a dream.
I'm Helen Ivory. I'm writing a sequence of poems called The Anatomical Venus, which I glibly say is the history of hysteria. And this is where this poem comes in. A sequence of Wunderkammers, which are these little cabinets of curiosity, the Victorian things. So these Wunderkammers are these rooms, and in each of these rooms there's a woman struggling. This is Wunderkammer with Esher stairs and Cheshire cat. Who paid the fiendish carpenter to build this house? Who birthed the grinning cat that binds so closely to her heel? Each time she wakes, she climbs the ladder to the loft. In faith she'll find the maker there, red-handed with a saw, nails, a midwife's apron. But of course the ladder kinks off into another room, where the cat settles down to lap its milk. And there's always a bottle there for her. Its drink me label shrinks the day, and the cat shapes a cave from her sleeping bones. Thank you.
My name's Christopher Cade. It might not come as much of a surprise that gathering 10 poets together to write about Alice, there's been a real focus on Drink Me this evening, and my poem's no different. And what I chose to write about, or what I was drawn to write about more likely, was how whenever Alice eats, she is turned to asterisks in the text, which on a very straightforward level is a pause. It acts as an ellipsis in the reading. There are also like little explosions of kind of intoxicated thought, each of those little stars. But also, I think there's a moment here in the text where Lewis Carroll doesn't quite know what to do with the body of Alice, and there's a slight disruption there. So my poem's called Alice's Body Turns to Stars, and it's in two parts, following Milton and other poems of an argument and a poem. It starts with a quote from Alice. She set to work and very soon finished off the cake. Argument. If Alice's body was not a telescope, it would stay outside a cat flap. If it was not shrinkable, it could not ask, who am I then? If it was not able to grow, it would change by night. When a sign says, eat me, she eats. Drink me tastes of cherry. Her body of text disappears in asterisks. Asterisks to the ancient Greeks meant little stars. Wikipedia says Alice's asterisks are section breaks. Asterisks in Alice are Alice's ellipses of thought. Her body goes out like little stars. She reappears through alterations. The telescope is back to front. Asterisks can be used in censorship, and consumption can be censorship. Late Latin, asteriscus. We are getting asteriscus. Six-pronged flakes that cover vowels. Consonants are more commonly concealed by asterisks. The name Alice is only 40% consonants. Alice then is mostly vowels. A girl in the text could be an upside down question mark, only she is not. She is asterisks, muddled and inquisitive and lost. 36 asterisks to be exact. Mathematicians also call these stars. Black snow on yellow, and Alice turns to stars whenever she eats. Poem. Alice's body turns to stars after drink me, after the taste of turkey and toffee. She turns to stars and is just 10 inches high, enough to pass through a garden gate, the height of a candle, thinking flame. And she wonders how it feels to be a candle blown out, though she's never blown out in text. She's turned to stars after she's eaten, in the mystery of consumption, the miles of intestines stranger than the paths she follows. She's turned to stars after eat me, beautifully marked in currants, beautifully, beautifully. Starfield should follow cinnamon, snowflakes after currants. It is wonderful to have a body that disappears after excitements and questions and instructions, to have a body that is turned to stars 36 times in one day, that is eat me, that is drink me, that is a telescope out the right way, pointing back to the snowflake of self that melts under its lens, that melts like black stars, becoming the body of Alice. Thank you.
Alice caught the baby with some difficulty, as it was a queer-shaped little creature and held out its arms and legs in all directions, just like a starfish, thought Alice. The poor little thing was snorting like a steam engine when she caught it, and kept doubling itself up and straightening itself out again, so that altogether, for the first minute or two, it was as much as she could do to hold it. As soon as she had made out the proper way of nursing it, which was to twist it up into a sort of knot and then hold it tight by its right ear and left foot so as to prevent it from undoing itself, she carried it out into the open air. If I don't take this child away with me, thought Alice, they're sure to kill it in a day or two. Wouldn't it be murder to leave it behind? She said the last words out loud, and the little thing grunted in reply. It had left off sneezing by this time. Don't grunt, said Alice. That's not at all a proper way of expressing yourself. The baby grunted again, and Alice looked very anxiously into its face to see what the matter was with it. There could be no doubt it had a very turn-up little nose, much more like a snout than a real nose. Also, its eyes were extremely small for a baby. Altogether, Alice did not like the look of the thing at all. But perhaps it was only sobbing, she thought, and looked into its eyes again to see if there were any tears. No, there were no tears. If you're going to turn into a pig, my dear, said Alice seriously, I'll have nothing more to do with you. Mind now. The poor little thing sobbed again, or grunted, it was impossible to say which, and they went on for some while in silence. Alice was just beginning to think to herself, now, what am I going to do with this creature when I get it home? when it grunted again, so violently that she looked down into its face with some alarm. This time, there could be no mistake about it. It was neither more nor less than a pig. And she felt it would be quite absurd for her to carry it any further. So she set the little creature down and felt quite relieved to see it trot away quietly into the wood. If it had grown up, she said to herself, it would have made a dreadfully ugly child. But it makes rather a handsome pig, I think. And she began thinking over other children she knew who might do very well as pigs.
I'm Holly McNish, and I don't really have a very deep introduction for the poem that I wrote. But about 3 days after I got asked to do this commission, I was going to Dublin to do a gig, and I went maybe at about 11 o'clock in the morning to have a glass of wine in Stansted Airport, Wetherspoons, as you might do on your way to Dublin. And they'd done a special Lewis Carroll decoration of the whole of Wetherspoons, and I thought, this is a sign, this is it, this is great for the poem. And all the male bar staff and waiters had to wear little rabbit ears and sort of mouse snout noses, and then this one female waitress who looked totally mortified had been given an Alice costume which was slightly too small for her, and she looked like she was about my age, and she had these sort of pop socks on, and she had to walk around having stag doos and hen doos sort of whistle at her and grab her, and it just reminded me of when I used to work at Little Chef and Boots in the most horrendous outfits, and it was worse. And basically this is my kind of sympathy poem for her, I guess, and it's called Shrinking. The clock ticks 12. She clocks off at 10. The costume obviously makes her feel like a dick. A cheap hairband of fake blonde plaits strapped to her head, white virgin pop socks that slip off her knees, and high heels that click as she walks. She's pouring our tea with her eyes to the floor, a glance half raging, half just embarrassed. As Wetherspoons Airport bar blesses this book with one overworked waitress dressed poorly as Alice. The fabric of her petticoat clings tight to the folds as a customer jokes how he'd get in her rabbit hole. The scoop of her pinafore exposes her tits in that purposeful play between woman and kid, between virgin and whore, that our fancy dress thrives on and our dear British culture still loves to deny it adores. The costume was hanging on the staff door at work, and though she'd asked not to wear it, it's hard to be heard when your heartless old boss is a loudmouthed bitch who bites off your head for the smallest of things. So she circuits the workplace again and again, begging the time to speed up with each round. But in the heat of her boredom and beckoning orders, the hands of the clocks just keep slowing down. Now the mad midday rush of stag doos and hens come for shots of Dutch courage before they board planes, and with each tipple of liquor, the belittling chorus grows more and more raucous till the wild party reigns. She serves them more shots, smashed. She sweeps up the spills, as customers' confidence soars with each sip, and as the beard beasts around her grow bigger and louder, she shrinks, and she shrinks, and she shrinks. Soon the whole bar is whiffled with dodos and chicks, Cheshire cat grins that chortle and quip, and the chips and the ketchup drip soon make her sick, and the claws of the griffins keep grabbing her bits. How cheerfully the crocodiles open their jaws, gobbling up in their hordes little fishes, she thinks, and with each copper coin tip, with each pervy pissed wink, each wipe of missed piss, each toilet shift tick, with each open-lipped comment from another rude prick, with each cocky complaint, with each new working day, with each person who says she should be grateful for this, that anybody with work should be grateful for this. She shrinks, and 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 she shrinks. To that rodent height that minimum wage work and a lack of real rights makes it feel sometimes impossible to grow back from. Thanks.
I'm Abigail Morley, and along with Catherine Smith and Emer Gillespie, I'm one of the co-founders of Ekphrasis. And I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight, thank our readers, and also the 20 other poets that are in this anthology, and some of whom I think may be here tonight. Yeah, okay. Before Alice went to work in Wetherspoons and was spotted by Holly, she lived in Woking and was a keen fan of the Jam. She thought a town like Malice and Going Underground were written especially for her. This is my poem, Daisy chains and downers. Because there's still mud smudged down my dress by hands too small to contain soil in their creeks and rivers, I draw lines with the stub of each finger, as if to cross myself out, drop daisies in the gutter. I ought to be ashamed of myself, hanging out on Stanley Road after dark, like a groupie struggling to get in the birch and pines. But I'm not. I can undo everything, like a trick that unravels itself until something unvanished is magically found. Tonight, I untelescope, listen to clocks untick. Nothing is lost as I do it. Outside the Working Men's Club, time slackens. Walton Road parts its lips, exhales, and I slip down to the unwelcome place. Underground, my name's uncomfortable in my mouth. I was a different person then. Arms and legs skim their image in the mirror's cockeyed curve. Femurs jolt at rock bottom, the pits, blue funk. You can date me by bone density, scraps of fabric, the shape my heart makes as it stops. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Helen Moore, and a lot of my memories of Alice in Wonderland are from listening to it on tape on my Walkman when I was a kid, sitting in a barber's in Chesterfield waiting while my dad got his hair cut, which always seemed to take forever, and I could never understand it because no one in there had very much hair. But I'd sit there listening to loads of Alice. Anyway, you'll be relieved to know that I decided not to try and write about the barbers in Chesterfield. Instead, I ended up writing something that about mirrors and the tricks that they can play on us, and also what I sometimes find creepy about wedding cakes. And it's got a little quote from one of the online materials about this exhibition, which I quite liked. It's from Hints on Etiquette and the Uses of Society, 1843, and it just says, "You cannot use your knife or fork or teeth too quietly." Looking glass. There is always a cake that says, "Eat me." Currants like the pupils of small eyes, the open mouth of the mirror showing how you've grown, your wrists ballooning and your thighs to chimney pots. The world's a doll's house, trampled by your tread, the continents of your left feet. There is always a bottle marked "Drink me," your open and unsteady palm, the room outgrowing you, the ocean of the carpet, tabletop becoming sky. Among the skyscrapers of furniture, you could forget yourself, a longed-for liquid disappearing act, the way your limbs contract, as if you should be on a cake yourself, a 3-tier sugar-spun affair, a wedding in July, and you on top in marzipan, in miniature, the laughing bridesmaid with her court bouquet and lilac dress, who bends towards you saying, "Isn't she good? Doesn't she look like a real woman?"
Hi, I'm Claire Pollard. I was, in my school play, I was Alice in my first year at high school. And I was really into method acting at the time, so I spent a lot of time immersing myself in her character. I think she's an interesting character, actually. In many ways, she's, privileged, white Victorian child, hyper-articulate, precocious, obnoxious, really, quite spoiled. But she is also just a tiny little girl and intensely vulnerable. I've been thinking for a while about writing about what it is to be a young woman growing up today in the time of Instagram and Twitter. And the more I thought about the internet world, how kind of arbitrary and absurd and brutal it is, and the lurches of perspective and the constantly shifting moral ground, the more I thought about Alice and her journey through Wonderland. So this is called The Pool of Tears. It begins with a quotation from the book. It was much pleasanter at home, thought poor Alice, when one wasn't always growing larger and smaller and being ordered about by mice and rabbits. I almost wish I hadn't gone down the rabbit hole, and yet. It's pretty, but hard to understand. A man flies a plane into a mountain. She shares the news as he flew urgently, without emotion, or no, slightly thrilled. She pictures a mountain like a child's drawing, a violet triangle, snow like sauce. Next, she types, "Rest in power." Next, she types that she is crying, uploads a photo of her beautiful soup. Words mean what we mean them to mean, like privileged, which she is, her house like a child's drawing of a house. They didn't need to colour her in. She was assigned a gender with her vagina, so in a child's drawing she'd wear a pink skirt, though it's actually blue, like the sunny sky's nail polish on her toes or his floating face. Look at the hole she tumbles down. The cupboards of festival headbands, dystopian YA and dogs in little coats, no makeup selfies, jelly beans that shout, "Eat me mindfully," trigger warnings, wow, 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 but still a hole with a bottom made of filthy breaking dark. There'll be a tiny key, a door she can't get through, like a child's drawing of a door. Sentence first, verdict afterwards. You won't believe these 6 impossible things before breakfast. She finds the phrase clickbait triggering. A white man shoots 9 black people in their church. She imagines bodies, actual bodies like her body, touches her tender bones in the mirror, weeps tears like a child's drawing of tears, absurd and outsized, plop, until she's up to her neck, struggling. This isn't helpful, says the dodo. The mouse is cis and middle class, so choo-choo, the rape train's on its way, is the kind of thing men say. Little boys turn into pigs, off with his, haha. No, a child's more important than a joke, as is the principle of safe space. Explain yourself, the caterpillar demands. Explain the cargo of children sinking off Africa in a boat crude and leaky as a child's drawing of a boat. Explain bodies spilt like a hand of cards, off with their heads. How fond she is of finding morals as she drifts downstream. Is she seriously tweeting this? The perpetual memorandum of her feelings. The stream will fill her up until she, trigger warning, drowns. She breathes deeply. All the bodies are smaller now, tiny. She's phantom-wise, a username screaming, "I am real." Life lesson, keep your temper. If it's a dream, dream better. No, wake up. No, something nuanced, with too many characters that a child like her could never draw.
Hello, I'm Amali Rodrigo. My poem is called How to Manage Your Flamingo. It's inspired by the poem Your Old Father William, and of course the croquet game. How to manage your flamingo. When the ball is a hedgehog that plays hooky, or the hoop keeps rearing up like a post, you are in this game if you like it or not, and new rules are made up as you go. There's no finer excuse than a flamingo to mark your place or train your aim. So here's your mallet, if you dare to tame it. Hold it up by the feet, shake it if you please, but you shan't unpuzzle your flamingo that quick. Scorn every caterpillar, scorn every mouse. Their wisdom is useless if you hunker in your doubts. And remember, the dodo isn't clever just because he's haughty. The raven isn't a tea tray, wish it as you might. So tempt your flamingo with sugar cubes, offer it a pie. Talk to it like a sultan or a queen who's lost her crown. When it falls upon its head and takes a crooked breath, pet it like a turtle wrapped in tulle. When it wraps around your waist or hangs down your neck, you'll never truly guess what your flamingo will do next. It's often the question that beats time on your back, wishing a mushroom might cure a tuneless voice. Then kindly reminded it is still a thing with wings. When your friend is feeling wretched and needs to rest against you, it will kick and it will bite, be jealous and proud. Put your lips to its bill and whisper in its ear that those who are too stubborn have the weaker will by far. When it's riled as a pitchfork, lean it on a buttercup and demand it be very, very silly. If it doesn't hurry up to grow pink with gaiety, tell it there are worse things in life than when 2 + 2 is twilight. And remember, its mood is never yours. A word can bite hard. A word can make you small or colossal as the universe. And if your friend says to you, "What is that dreadfully ugly bird?" reply that nowhere and nothing can stand between your love. They must shake hands and give each other up. Sometimes it chatters, but doesn't mean an awful lot. That's when you can pretend to be two people at once. Because there are two sides to every flamingo, turn one like a key to find out who you really are. Use the other like a ladle to stir your pot of broth. To rouse a drowsy flamingo, put a gerund on its head. If it gets too frisky, by all means, put it on a leash. But never ever try to squeeze it in your purse, for you shouldn't have to shrink to fit another's world. Sometimes it's a riddle, sometimes a rhyme like a love letter that happens in your heart. It often makes you kinder than you feel, but to hold it is harder than you think. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Robert Sita, and I've been waiting for years to be the White Rabbit. Finally, I've made it. When I was 8, I was cast as the White Rabbit. Play was cancelled. I think Alice had mumps. 20, I was cast as the White Rabbit. It rained on the garden. So now, finally, I get to let my White Rabbit out. And of course, I think there is a bit of a White Rabbit in me. Inveterate rushabout, dandified doer and list maker. But here he is in the spotlight. White Rabbit. Wind on my fur, ruffled backwards. This is how time feels. Late. Is it just me, caught in this breathless race, wheezing like an old accordion, chasing a yesterday tune, counting time badly? When did I begin this perennial journey backwards towards the vanishing point, a mathematically impossible rabbit hole? I count, you count. That's our universality, my friend, my fellow rabbit, confrère, citizen. And my trail of lost objects, fan, handkerchief, pocket watch, the disappeared days of my life. Surely you too have such a scattering, a lost on the ground, to the wind. Tell me what it is you mislaid, and where. Begin now and make it logical. That's what she would say, with her passion for narrative. Alice, with her straight gold hair. Alice, with her neatly turned grammar. While down on the seashore, the scaly animals wait, unlike you and me, the rush-about crowd, for the Queen's arrival, the painting of the roses, click-clack of yet another nonsensical game, the turning of the playing cards on the table. Before the waves rise, then go backwards down the rabbit hole, which is where I came in. Wind on my fur, time talking, my thoughts ahead of themselves, my body always late, late, late.
Good evening. I'm Catherine Smith, and along with Emer Gillespie and Abigail Morley, I co-founded Ekphrasis. We're delighted to be here this evening, and we'd really like to thank the British Library for all their help and support. It's lovely to be here in this particularly gorgeous situation with all these wonderful poets. And as Abigail said, I'd really like to thank all the poets who are in our anthology, some of whom are here this evening. It's been a wonderful process to collect and collate all these poems. My poem is entitled The Grin, and I was always very charmed by the Cheshire Cat's grin, which had its own life. It was never always attached to the Cheshire Cat, which I thought was quite fun. And I was always being told off at school for grinning at inappropriate moments. I went to a school where grinning was not really the thing. Being miserable was more in keeping with the school's philosophy. And I always liked the idea of a grin breaking free of its owner and doing its own thing. So this is the grin. And you can wipe that grin off your face, snaps a passing teacher, as you slouch outside the head teacher's office, convicted for daydreaming in trigonometry. What can you do but comply? You palm your grin. It sticks at first, then peels off. You shake it free, watch it flutter upwards. It startles when the school bell shrieks, then bobs above the heads of hordes of girls stampeding to the playing fields. Cheerful, it slips through the open door, and you know where it's going, to take its place in the longest grass with all the other grins, the smirks, the yawns, the blurted truths. Thank you.
This poet this evening is meant to be Luke Wright. Now, Luke is starring in his show at the Soho Theatre at the moment, and the idea was that Luke was going to take his applause, race across town, and be here. I was most strict with everybody about keeping the pace up tonight and not doing long introductions and keeping the show moving forward. And we've moved so far forward that Luke isn't here. Now, I'm really sorry. We could finish with our last excerpt from Alice, or if you wouldn't mind, I might just try and read Luke's poem, because given the circumstances, the opening lines are quite amusing. Luke Wright, Alice. Now, if Luke comes in while I'm reading this poem, I'm going to run off the stage and ask him to come up and take it from me. Alice. It seems he's always late these days. He races off, he stays away. It seems he's always late, he's always late, he's always late. Her baby came in summertime, the suck and coo in early June, and life, the bills, the work, the stress, became an endless afternoon of kissing, feeding, washing, changing, at the beck of whimpered whims, and Alice, in this dreamlike lilt, deferred to him, she followed him. Let's move, my love, the life we dreamed. Let's leave this smog, this housing scheme, this city's shouts, this rat-a-tat. Let's find a sleepy cul-de-sac. Now Alice wanders croquet lawns, hears footsteps through the checkered hall. Their things, their life won't fill this space. Now everything she is feels small. His mother comes to help and fuss, the pristine queen of village life. She tidies things and clinks and sings. She proffers tarts and tart advice. And Alice, falling through her dreams in half sleep, sees him choosing ties. But when she wakes, he's never there. It's silent, save the baby's cries. It seems he's always late these days. He races off, he stays away. It seems he's always late. He's late, he's late, he's late, he's late. And what to do but watch this thing and catch her sleep and sit and slim as baby's tears become a lake and Alice tries her best to swim. Then dry her mind with radio and daytime tellies tit for tat. The eat me, drink me, who are you? Oh, that's the greatest puzzle, that. And Alice knew, she knew her life. She gave herself such good advice, but cast adrift in time and wealth, it's queer. She doesn't know herself. And still he's late. He's late these days. He races off, he stays away. It seems he's always late. He's late, he's late, he's late, he's late. And Alice reads, and Alice cooks, and Alice eats, and Alice sews, and Alice feeds, and Alice coos, and Alice cries, and Alice goes to rhyme time, playgroup, baby space, a throng of women in her face. It's mothers, never dads. A clinking tea time, loud and mad, they gather round, all kind and mumsy, and Alice, she feels huge and clumsy. Children and their toxic fumes. There isn't room, she's not a thing to say. Each sound so sharp, the room's asway. Her nerves recoil, her senses fray. She has to take her baby far, far, far away. And still he's late. He's late. These days he races off, he stays away. It seems he's always late. He's late, he's late, he's late, he's late. It's eat me, drink me, who are you? The tick-tocks of the kitchen clock invade her thoughts and stop her talk. Her keys no longer fit the locks. Her babies weep, seep into sleep. The nighttime shadows slowly creep. The Queen is here. And still he's late. Her baby cries, another lake. Oh, eat me, drink me, eat me, drink. Her thoughts fill till she cannot think. Oh, eat me, drink me, eat me, drink. Her thoughts fill till she cannot think. Oh, eat me, drink me, eat me, drink. The Queen is talking soot and lead. She's miles high, near 2 miles high. She's off her head, she's off her head, she's off her head. And still he's late. He's late. Today he never comes. He stays away. He's always late. Forever late. He's late. He's late. He's late. He's late.
So she sat on with closed eyes and half believed herself in Wonderland, though she knew she had but to open them again and all would change to dull reality. The grass would be only rustling in the wind, and the pool rippling to the waving of the reeds. The rattling teacups would change to the tinkling sheep bells, and the Queen's shrill cries to the voice of the shepherd boy, and the sneeze of the baby, the shriek of the griffon, and all the other queer noises would change, she knew, to the confused clamour of the busy farmyard, while the lowing of the cattle in the distance would take the place of the mock turtle's heavy sobs. She thought of how she would gather about her other little children and make their eyes bright and eager with many a strange tale. Perhaps even with the dream of Wonderland of long ago.